Welcome to this it's recording. So how many people had gotten the link that I sent for the Sabbasava Sutta and had read that? Just kind of raise your hand if you have your video on. So last week we covered the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and on the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path. And in the second noble truth, cause of suffering, the cause of suffering is craving, of course, but it's also all of the accumulated 10 defilements of the mind accumulated through greed, hatred, and delusion through the process of our karma accumulation. And you could say that the whole practice of Dhamma is about removing these taints or the fetters, the hindrances. And so this sutta describes the 7 ways in which the Buddha recommended for removing these or asavas, and they're based on, as I mentioned, greed, hatred, and delusion. So this sutta was given in Savatthi, in Anathapindika's park, and the Buddha addressed the monks. He was giving a discourse to the monks. He said, monks, I shall teach you a discourse on the restraint of all the taints. So taints is a word that we use for basically the defilements, the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of wrong views. So all other defilements arise through those. And then he said, listen attentively or closely to what I say. He said, yes, Venerable Sir, we're listening. So then the Buddha said, because I say that the destruction of the taints is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and see. And knows and sees what? So the Buddha is saying that, the only way we can remove the defilements is by knowing them and seeing them. But he starts with, rather than mentioning the defilements, he says, seeing with wise attention and unwise attention. So the very first thing is a person must understand what is wise attention and what is unwise attention. Because unwise attention gives rise to all of the defilements, and wise attention is what helps a person to restrain themselves and eventually eradicate the root of those defilements. So I'm just going to read a part of it. So when one attends unwisely, the unarisen taints arise, and the arisen taints increase. So when one does not have wise attention, then the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion arise in the mind and grow. And the unarisen taints arisen taints increase. So the unarisen taints arise, and the taints that are already in the mind get increased. And when one attains wisely, when one applies mindfulness, right understanding to these taints and the appropriate sort of antidotes, then those unarisen taints do not arise, and the arisen taints decrease or are abandoned. So it's all part of cultivating the right thought, applying the effort to arise wholesome states and the effort to abandon the unwholesome states. And what things are fit for attention? The objects that decrease sensual desire, egotism, greed, hatred, and delusion. Those are the things that are fit for attention. What is unfit for attention are the things that increase our greed, hatred, and delusion. And primarily, it's the Four Noble Truths are fit for attention. And the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths are what are unfit for attention. And actually, this sutra is the taints to be removed by seeing. This actually implies realizing the first stage of enlightenment or entering the stream. Because that wisdom, that insight into the Four Noble Truths, the insight into anatta or emptiness, the understanding anicca, dukkha, and anatta, that is what destroys the defilements. And so this sutra already presupposes, or starting with people that have already reached at least the first stage of enlightenment, because the taints or defilements that are removed by seeing are the first three fetters of the overcoming the self-delusion, or seeing the emptiness of the self, or overcoming the personality view. So in that first glimpse of seeing, that first moment of what you could call real seeing, one gets a glimpse of where the ego has vanished in one's mind as an experience. So one experiences the unconditioned or the non-dual awareness. So when a person has that powerful insight, that destroys the first three fetters of personality belief, the attachment to rites and rituals, and doubts. So before one has that experience, you might have heard about no self, and then you might have doubts. Well, is the self real? It appears to be real. Maybe is it not real? And the mind has doubts about it because it still has that sense of self. So no matter how much you tell people the self is an illusion, because it's still deeply ingrained in their mind, they kind of don't really believe it. Or they might understand it at an intellectual level, but only at that first moment of seeing does one really understand it. Of course, that experience only lasts for a few moments or longer normally, but at least it destroys the belief in itself. It doesn't destroy the feeling in the mind. You still have the feeling that the I is there, but at least now you know it's an illusion. Before you still had doubts. Before you thought it was real, or before you had doubts, well, is it real or is it not real? But now you understand that it is an illusion. And even though it's still there in the mind. At least intellectually, you've overcome that belief in itself. And it also destroys the hindrances or fetter of believing in rites and rituals, thinking that certain rites and rituals will allow a person to attain enlightenment just by doing that, by circumambulating a holy mountain 108 times, or bathing in the holy, some holy water, or other beliefs that are thought that could liberate one's mind. So that's an example of a rite and a ritual. And then it destroys the doubts about, the possibility of attaining enlightenment, because you had that true glimpse. So anyway, those three fetters are what are overcome by seeing. And so the rest of these, the overcoming of the rest of the fetters are what the following 6 sections of the sutta are focused on. And so the second way, this is for people, I mean, again, all these monks that the Buddha was talking about, most of them had attained at least the first stage of enlightenment already. But you still have the defilements. I mean, the mind is still not really pure. You still have greed, hatred, and subtler forms of ignorance. You still have greed, hatred, and delusion, although they won't be as strong as they used to be. So the rest of these 6 ways of practicing are designed at helping to remove all of the rest of those defilements, the 7 remaining fetters of sensual desire, ill will, and so on. So the second way of removing the defilements is by restraining. So even though we have a glimpse of, the truth, or, of course, the Buddha was talking, to people who had already reached the level of, entering the stream. But for others who have not reached that level, like for most other people, lay people, or even monks, people who have not entered the stream, they can still practice. I mean, even though you might not have that full seeing the truth, even within your own practice of mindfulness and meditation, developing your mindfulness and concentration, and developing your wisdom, getting insights, that's also, you're seeing something, you're also seeing, but it may not be to that powerful level of having yet overcome those first 3 fetters. But nevertheless, the lay people can still practice all these 7 ways of weakening the mental defilements, of weakening greed, hatred, and delusion. So the second step is by restraining, and this involves using your mindfulness and the power of developing patience and equanimity, but to restrain the reactions. So let's say if you have the urge to want to use harsh speech or to tell a lie, you'd see that urge coming into the mind, but through your mindfulness, you'd recognize that, this is a desire for negative speech, and you would restrain yourself by saying that, this is a unwholesome motivation, unwholesome intention, and then try not to actually commit that speech or whatever other action or even thoughts that may be coming into your mind. So that's where you have to apply the right effort. So right thought and right effort come into play when you're practicing the sensory restraint. Or even let there a strong itch comes up on your body and you have that urge to want to itch. So you restrain yourself from itching so that that habit pattern or desire to itch will be kind of neutralized, and you won't go through that unnecessary movement of, itching an itch, for example. So all the six senses, that means having mindfulness of restraining the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And there's other ways of helping to restrain them, but if they've already come up, then we have to apply our mindfulness and right thought and right effort, to overcome them. Otherwise, if we give in and we indulge or repeat that habitual type of thought, speech, or action, then they just become stronger and they become harder to overcome. In the future, every time you repeat a habit, then those habits get stronger. And every time you restrain yourself and to abandon that urge to do one of these unwholesome actions, then you weaken that habit pattern. And most of the practice of Dhamma is concerned with that process. And then the third way of overcoming is by using. So this particularly pertains to monks, but it can also, lay people can also use these guidelines. So it refers to the four requisites of food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. So these are the four requisites of everybody's life, monks or even lay people. So you all have to eat food, you have a place to live, clothing, and medicines. So using them wisely, that means not abusing them. So he gives the example of, well, for monks, whenever we put on the clothing, for example, or whenever we eat food, we reflect, I'm eating this food mindfully, not out of craving for the taste or craving to make the body a certain way and beautiful, give it strong muscles and so on. But I'm using this food like medicine. So that's the wise attention. That's applying the wise attention, attending wisely. Instead of, oh, I want that food, oh, I love that taste, and just, greedily eating something. That's eating with unwise attention. So instead we apply wise attention. We treat this food like a medicine, right? To keep the body strong enough, to help the immune system and other systems of the body to be able to work properly so that we can live in freedom from hunger and really live in relative ease and comfort, but without developing pains of overeating or getting eating disorders or sick if you overeat, if you overeat the wrong foods and so on. So, and then your clothing. We mindfully use this clothing just to ward off the heat and cold, to cover the body, so it's protected and for modesty and so on, but not using it to show off or to win beauty pageants or whatever other reasons. And the same whenever you use beds and seats or furniture or use anything else. We use it, for its utilitarian purpose, but without kind of having greed and wanting to use the most opulent and beautiful things, whether it's to boast or show off to others and so on, or to try to dwell in excess comfort or luxuriousness and so on. So like that, we're using the requisites by using them, but using them wisely, not unwisely. So this is where especially the reflections and the right effort come in, and the wise attention and the unwise attention. So it's basically anything that we use in our daily life to understand the purpose of it and not to abuse it. Basically, it means not to abuse or become overly infatuated or addicted to wanting more and more beautiful, luxurious things, which increase one's greed. And if you don't get them, then you feel disappointed or dejected and so on. So, it doesn't mean you deny yourself any of the things that we need to use, but using them with that kind of wise attention, and not to make the body weaker in the purpose of using those things. So the fourth part of the removing is enduring. So this means enduring the unpleasant sensations that come to us. So, you have to endure the cold sometimes. You have to endure the heat. You have to endure unpleasant words that you might hear from other people. You might have to endure unpleasant sights, smells, tastes, because our senses are always being assailed by so many different types of sensory stimulus. Some of them are pleasant, that stimulate our greed, and some of them are unpleasant, that cause us discomfort and pain, and you can't always get away from them. So the ability to endure them also requires the wise attention, and requires the right thought and the right effort to understand, okay, these painful sensations that are coming to me, they're impermanent. They'll change. If we wait 5 or 10 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, or however, eventually they're all going to change. The weather's going to change from cold to warm. The warmth is going to change from extreme heat to moderate heat, or to get cooler. And somebody who's talking a bunch of foolish things is going to stop after some time. If you don't talk back to them, usually they'll just stop talking after a while and realize no one's listening, or whatever else it is that may be coming. So the understanding of impermanence is also part of the wise attention, knowing that everything will pass. So, and to have patience and the ability to endure these unpleasant sensations that you can't always avoid. And actually that comes to the fifth way of overcoming the defilements, and that is avoiding. People might hear that and say, what, avoiding? Because that's what, of course, a lot of people do avoid things, but so basically it means avoiding, let's say, dangerous places that could bring you harm. So, or it means like if you go to a big protest, for example. Of course, these are guidelines the Buddha was talking with the monks to avoid large, big crowds where there could break out a bunch of fights, or there could break out, dangers of different kinds. So, to avoid places like, especially where there could be violent protests and so on. Again, these were advice given to monks. Now, people may go to those, but you may reap some problems and anxieties if you go to some of these large types of, protests or whatever else kind of meetings and so on. But any places of danger could be just, not to walk on the edge of a cliff, or like these people are taking selfies, right? In order to get famous, they'd stand on a dangerous edge of the Grand Canyon or some other place. And we've heard the stories of people falling off and being killed, right? Because our greed leads us to doing stuff that could cause us danger and to imperil our life. So that's also just another example. And also to avoid well, I don't like the term, but bad friends or evil companions or foolish people that want you to egg you on or try to lure you into breaking your vows, or lure you into joining them in some unsavory habits, like when you first started, if you hang out with some drug people, they might want to get you onto drugs because, you feel like you want to be part of the group, or, joining gangs, or any type of unskillful, unwholesome kind of people that want to take you away from, the practice of Dhamma, or do something that's against your better judgment, right? So avoiding those kind of people, especially if you feel that you're not strong enough to resist their lures or their temptations to drag you into doing something that you would regret later on. So avoiding those kind of situations, or just unsuitable things. If you know you have an addiction for something, don't go and frequent those shops or those places that have these stimuluses that might trigger off your desire. So, if you're trying to, overcome certain food addictions or disorders, don't walk down the street with all the bakery shops or all the coffee aromas or whatever else it might be. Or rather, if you have a penchant for gambling, don't go to Las Vegas or other places. So that's another example of, avoiding, because everybody knows their own weaknesses, right? So if you know your weaknesses and you've indulged in things in the past, then you should try to avoid those kind of places to prevent, perhaps, even though we think we might have, overcome certain things, we don't really know if we get tempted strong enough, if our buttons are pushed hard enough, we might, these old urges might arise and we do something that we then might regret. So that's the removing the hindrances through avoiding. And this also, the sixth one is about removing. Now, a lot of these things, these different categories seem similar, but they have some different aspects to them. So in removing, that means if an unwholesome thought comes up into your mind, to remove it. That means not to indulge it. So let's say if a thought of sensual desire arises in the mind, and you see that temptation to want to pursue some sensual daydream, for example, or other types of thoughts. You would have to then apply your right understanding to that, and the effort not to allow it, to follow it. And actually, this is where this sutta also dovetails or ties into another sutta, which is the Vitaka Santana Sutta, number 20 in the Majjhima Nikaya, is where we apply the removing of distracting thoughts, the 5 ways of removing these distracting or unwholesome type of thoughts of sensual desire, thoughts of ill will, and all the spin-offs of that, jealousy, envy, resentment, and thoughts of anger or hatred, and delusion, egotistical types of thoughts or other sort of wrong views. So we apply the opposite to reflect on sort of the opposite quality of that thought. So for example, if a thought of sensual desire arises in the mind, then instead of dwelling on the mark of beauty, whatever, because usually we have a sensual desire because it reminds us of something that, of some pleasurable feeling, or we're focusing on the beautiful marks of those particular objects, whether it's the smell or the visible or the sound. And you can see that triggering off the sensual desire. You can apply then the right thought of, or the opposite types of thought to see, reflect on the impermanence of these objects, or even contemplating the unwholesome aspect of these thoughts, or how much problems they bring if you indulge in them. But you contemplate that, okay, this object might look beautiful or smell beautiful at the moment, but its real nature is one to change and decay and die. And for example, food. If you have a craving for food, you can reflect, okay, if you put the food in your mouth and chew just for a few times, and then you put that food back out onto your hand or plate, and you look at it, you don't want to touch it anymore. You want to get rid of it, because it only looks beautiful when you're looking at the outer parts of it. But when you see it from kind of inside, then it loses its beauty. So that's one way that you can reflect on these objects, or seeing it with X-ray vision. Let's say if you had the power of X-ray vision, right, and you see some beautiful man or a woman or something else. Instead of focusing on their blonde hair, their blue eyes, or their creamy, smooth skin, if you had X-ray vision and you could get beyond the skin and just see their bones and flesh and blood inside, you wouldn't have that same kind of desire arising. So that's just one, example of applying this and seeing the opposite nature of a particular object that's causing you some, disturbance or, attachments. So while you're doing that, the thoughts may subside, and if those thoughts of sensual desire subside, you then come back to your meditation subject and continue developing your mindfulness and concentration. Or another example with hatred, ill will or hatred, you can practice metta. Instead of thinking ill thoughts toward a certain person, whatever they did to you, you can cultivate metta. But first of all, you have to apply right thought. Well, this person, okay, he may be doing these things to me now, disturbing me, but he may have done a lot of good things in the past. Maybe he's not such a bad person. And not to dwell on their negative faults, but to dwell and try to remember some positive aspects of what that person might have done. And send them metta. Okay, this person has their own troubles at home, and we're all in the same kind of situation in life. and to try to wish that person, may they be well and happy, free from suffering, rather than wanting to cultivate the thoughts of ill will or hatred towards a person that might have done something to you or is doing something to you, but they might have done other more positive or good things with you in the past, or it could be other situations too. So anyway, we try to cultivate the opposite types of thoughts. Now, if that doesn't work, if the thoughts keep coming back, then the Buddha advises to examine the danger in harboring these kind of thoughts. So, if you dwell on a thought, there's a little saying actually. If you sow a thought, you reap an action. If you sow an action, you reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you reap a character. And if you sow a character, you reap a destination. That means if you keep entertaining negative thoughts, at some point you're probably going to take some action based on them. And if you get some benefit out of that, if your ego gets satisfied or your desire gets satisfied or whatever, then you'll be tempted to want to do it again. And so you go on repeating the habits. Let's say a person who stole something for the first time, he got away with it. Oh, that was pretty easy, And then later on, so let me do that again. Well, sooner or later they're going to get caught, So, or if you do something once, you may get away with it. But if you repeat it, start doing it over and over again, and people are also going to know you. You sow a character. People are going to say, "Oh, that person's a thief. That person's a liar," because certain habitual traits. And then at some point, somebody's going to catch you and or get put in jail, or somebody's going to come around to beat you or worse. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. That these thoughts that we have seem to be harmless, but they accumulate, and they're very subtle, and they disguise themselves in many ways. And so that's why it takes a lot of mindfulness and takes these different ways of dealing with them. One way doesn't work, you have to apply another method. So to examine the danger of pursuing those thoughts. The third one is to try to just turn away from them or forget them. But usually that's quite hard for people. But if you had enough concentration, you might be able to forget them and come back to your object of concentration and then forget them temporarily. Or it means to turn away from them. Let's say if you're walking down the street and you have a weakness for certain things, like women wanting to go window shopping for nice dresses, or men wanting to go into some other places or whatever, a bar. When you walk down the street, if you catch yourself wanting to look, turn away, look on the other side of the street. Or if you're attracted to certain, again, people or so on that are attracting your attention, if you know you have a weakness for that, don't continue to look at it. You turn away or turn around and go back. So in a way, that's kind of like avoiding too. So a lot of these different categories, there are a certain amount of overlap in them, but it's giving you many different ways of using to help, abandon those unwholesome impulses. And if they keep coming back, then the fourth technique is to trace them back to see how they arose. That means that, okay, this thought of sensory desire arose. How did it come about? And you think, well, because I saw this object. So I saw some beautiful object and it triggered off sense desire in me. Then why did you see that object? Because I had a desire to walk down this road. I know if I walk down this road, I'll see that object. So the desire to walk down this road. And then you trace it back and you see the domino effect of how these thoughts originally. And then why did I have the desire to walk down the road? Because I remembered the road and the pleasure I got from it from the past. So you can keep on tracing it back. And as you're doing that, you might that desire may just drop out of your mind. And then you could come back to, or you'd see the futility in how all these desires are, they don't come from just nowhere. There's always a cause for them. And kind of trace it all the way back to the cause. And the cause essentially will be tracing it all the way back to not understanding the Four Noble Truths, or not understanding the nature of the ego and the nature of the mind. But anyway, so it's using this analysis to trace the thoughts back until you see the futility of harboring these thoughts, or the danger in them, that you just keep getting more strongly attached to them. And when they go away, you come back to your meditation subject. And then, if all four of those still not work, so you've applied all four of those techniques of thinking about the opposite kind of thought, thinking about the dangers, and trying to forget it, tracing it back to its source. And as a last resort, the Buddha said, if they're still persisting, then you put your tongue up on the top, on the roof of your mouth, and clench your teeth, kind of like a strong person holding down a weak person onto the ground with their foot or their hand. You force those thoughts out of your mind. Now, personally, I don't think that works very well. Hopefully, you would have overcome them before that happened. But I have used it in it, and it does kind of work. It's like you're up against the wall and you just force that thought out of your mind. Of course, some people might say, well, that's repressing your thoughts, and that's going to just come back again. And that's true, it probably will. But it's through the other methods that we gradually remove the cause of it. Now, I give this removing the distracting thoughts, I give that, there's a little analogy that I usually explain when I'm talking about this, is if you're walking down a neighborhood, and let's say a neighborhood you don't know, or maybe you do know it, but the neighbor's dog comes out and runs after you and, grabs your pant leg with his teeth and, is pulling, and you're pulling your leg away and you're shaking your leg and you're trying to get the dog off. So maybe you shake the dog off, you let go of your pant leg for about 5 seconds. You take a couple of steps, but he comes back again and grabs the pant leg again. And you shake it off again, take a couple of steps, the dog runs back, grabs your pant leg again. Then out of desperation, or what do you do in that case? Well, you pick up reach down and get a stick or a rock or something and pick it up and throw it. And hopefully, if it's a Labrador retriever or some other dog, just run after the stick and leave you alone. And give you enough time to get on your bicycle and ride away, or go in through your gate and close the gate. So in a similar way, these 5 ways of removing distracting thoughts, we call it throwing the mind a bone. So to distract our mind from that particular defilement, we throw it, we give it something to chew on, some right thought. Some of these different reflections, reflecting on the danger of becoming addicted to these thoughts and other harmful qualities of them, or reflecting on that, those, that jingle of sow a thought, reap an action, sow an action, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character, sow a character, reap a destiny. The whole law of karma is summed up in that little jingle, you might say. Okay, so those are those 7 factors. So the Buddha talked about, abandoning. Oh, actually, no, that was only the 6th one. I forgot. Now comes the big one, the 7th one. Okay, we finished the 5 ways of overcoming distracting thoughts. Now we come back to the 7th of the ways of overcoming the defilements, and that's by developing. And this refers to, again, it refers to people that have already attained to the first stage of enlightenment or reached the stage of the Sotapanna. But again, it could be the same thing for anybody who's meditating. But it's developing the 7 factors of enlightenment. And this is what helps somebody who's already reached the first level of the Sotapanna. Then those factors of enlightenment are more important, and they become the powers of mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Now, I'm not going to go into all these in details. That could be the subject of another talk or sutta class. But basically, it refers to reaching the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stages of enlightenment. By developing the factors of enlightenment, then you destroy the 7 remaining fetters. So by practicing meditation, developing concentration, mindfulness, developing these 7 factors of enlightenment, gradually you reach the 2nd level of enlightenment, which is the once returning. And that drastically weakens greed and hatred. So it's like a powerful beam of light that goes in, and you get that 2nd kind of experience of the unconditioned state, and it weakens the unconscious contents of the mind, so that greed and hatred become very kind of weak at that point. It would take somebody to push your buttons quite a lot for any desire or ill will or to arise in the mind. So just as an arbitrary number, let's say it might reduce greed, hatred, and delusion by 80% or maybe 90%. Could be different in different people, but at any rate, quite a lot. So that's why it's called once returning, that you would return again because you have still that small amount remaining to work on. So that 2nd stage, those defilements are removed, greed and hatred are removed by cultivating the 7 factors of enlightenment until one has, again, that powerful path moment that breaks those defilements. But you still have traces of desire and ill will left in the mind, and what are called the 5 lower fetters. So you go on developing the path further, and you keep developing until you reach the 3rd stage of enlightenment. You're practicing those 7 factors of enlightenment until you have another powerful experience which totally eradicates the greed and hatred. And so no traces of greed or hatred, desire, or aversion would arise in the mind. Again, any kind of sensual attraction or aversion. And that's called the state of never returning. because the mind would not return anymore to indulging in or wanting sensual desire or aversion. But it still has the five, what are called the five higher fetters. And these are subtle desire. These are very subtle desires that might come up in the desire for meditation states, for example. The desire to be born in the Deva worlds or the Brahma worlds, where there's lots of subtle desires. So it's called the subtle form realm, Rupa Raga and Arupa Raga, the desire to be reborn in these subtle higher realms that people can attain through developing their meditation, like developing jhanas and so on. Or even people, you know, in Sri Lanka, people have the wish, oh, may I be born in Tusita heaven, or when you offer dana, you know, you're saying, may my relatives be reborn in Tusita heaven. So, you know, there's that desire to be still have these subtle sensual pleasures. But it refers to even higher levels than that. Anyway, so those are removed. Actually, those are part of the five higher fetters that are removed only with the stage of the Arahant. And then there's subtle restlessness and conceit also, and ignorance. So restlessness, conceit, and ignorance is still there even in that after the third stage of enlightenment. So you keep on developing the seven factors of enlightenment more until at some point you even remove those last fetters and attain full enlightenment. So anyway, that is how developing the seven factors of enlightenment, the removing of all traces of the fetters through developing. And so it refers to precisely the developing the four foundations of mindfulness, but especially the seven factors of enlightenment. Because you can practice the four foundations of mindfulness, but you might not get up to the last level of meditating or contemplating on the seven factors of enlightenment. You can contemplate mindfulness of the body, you can contemplate mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mental states, but a lot of people may not go on to develop the higher levels of that. But anyway, so that is comes to the end of the sutta, and after the Buddha has mentioned all those things, the monks rejoiced in what the Buddha had said. And, so I'm just going to read this last part that when the Buddha is addressing the monks. He said, monks, when for a monk the taints that should be abandoned by seeing have been abandoned by seeing, when the taints that should be abandoned by restraining have been abandoned by restraining, when the taints that should have been abandoned by using have been abandoned by using, when the taints that should be abandoned by enduring have been abandoned by enduring, when the taints that should be removed by avoiding have been removed by avoiding, when the taints that should be abandoned by removing have been abandoned by removing, when the taints that should be abandoned by developing have been abandoned by developing, then that person is called one who dwells restrained with all the restraints, with the restraint of all the defilements. He or she has severed craving, flung off the fetters, and with the complete penetration of conceit, he or she has made an end to suffering. And that is what the Blessed One said And the bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted. And the Blessed One were, right on, right on. So I hope that you can remember some of those stages. And again, even though the Buddha was addressing the monks, and most of them had already attained that, destroyed the first three fetters by seeing, but we can apply even when in our mundane practice of, our practice of meditation and practicing the Eightfold Path, then we can gradually develop to the point where eventually we will have that first powerful glimpse that destroys those first three fetters. And from there, you could say it's almost like downhill. Let's say you've been struggling up a mountain, climbing a mountain. I know I go trekking in Nepal, so I've climbed a lot of mountains that walk up and struggle to with a little oxygen and at 4,000 feet and struggle to reach the peak, and then you reach the peak and you get a beautiful view, but then you have to go down, and then you have to start going down, and then you lose that view, but you'll remember it, and it will motivate you to want to do another trek. So it's sort of like that, when we practice our meditation and we get these little these insights, and through the practice, you see, oh, the practice works. Yeah, if you follow these steps, follow the Eightfold Path, follow the practice of the mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, practicing the four foundations of mindfulness. They produce results, but you have to give the time and effort into that. Okay, now having finished that, I want to open it up to some questions. If I see there's some chats here, see if anybody has written some questions. There's a few hellos like that. What is the title of this sutta? It's the Sabbasava Sutta, or overcoming the defilements, overcoming the asavas. So this asava means the taints, or basically it means greed, hatred, and delusion, and all the spin-off types of unwholesome mental states that arise from greed, hatred, and delusion. So that's Sabbasava, Majjhima Nikaya number 2. Yeah, I've printed that sutta central link. If you go to the letter I just sent out yesterday, I gave the link to this sutta central that appears on the chat there, number 2. So thank you, Aya, for putting that up on the chat. And regarding this discussion, when do you advise the removal of distracting thoughts? And when do you advise merely noting them as desire or anger or whatever else? Well, first, yes, the first thing is mindfulness. We become mindful of them. So you can make a note. If you're watching the breath and then some sensual desire comes in the mind, then you recognize it, mindfulness. Sensual desire has arisen in me now. Or just make a note of desire. Now, if your mindfulness is strong enough, the desire might just vanish from your mind there and then, and allow you to come back to your object of concentration or just the flow of awareness. But if it keeps coming back, this is when you apply those other antidotes of then reflecting on it, removing the distracting thoughts. You know, if they keep on coming back 2 or 3 times, you try to note them, but they keep coming. But that's when you apply, especially the removing of the distracting thoughts. But in your daily life, let's say, like, you know, avoiding places, you know, in your daily life when you're going shopping and you have, don't walk down the aisle of the supermarket that has all the things that you crave, avoid those aisles, for example, or going in the mall, avoid the places that might stimulate or trigger your desire. If you know that you have weakness for that and you've given in before many times, and then you oh shucks, I shouldn't have done that. We're always doing that kind of thing, right? It's because one was unmindful. So these ways of removing distracting thoughts, they may come up in your meditation, and you can apply them in your daily life too. If you're in your office and a certain person rubbed your buttons the wrong way, or avoid them. Every time you meet a certain person, you wind up getting in a heated argument, then avoid going over there. Something like that. At least don't look at them. So anyway, these are just a few simple examples of how we can apply these things in our daily life, but it's mostly it's the wise attention, having the wise attention and the unwise attention, and that refers to being able to contemplate or understand, having wise attention to sensual desire, ill will, and other defilements that come up into the mind, and instead attending with wise attention. That this thing is impermanent. The wise attention always refers to contemplating something as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So those are the sort of the bedrock of applying insight. That everything is subject to impermanence, suffering if you cling to them, and they're all caused by conditioning. There's no owner or controller that's making us do these things, causing them. It's all coming about because of the causes and conditions. And if you're aware of the paticca samuppada, then the arising of suffering and the ceasing of suffering in that sense too. Okay. Why are the other realms considered higher realms if the pleasure of them can lead to not attending to one's development? Because not everybody is interested to attend to their own development. So majority of people are not interested in their own development in that sense of spiritual development. They're developing more desire and aversion. And even here on the earth plane, but then if people have heard about these places and they develop the desire, oh yeah, because there's a tendency to think, oh, enlightenment, that's so far away from me, and it's almost impossible to attain enlightenment now, and why should I even bother? And let me just practice taking refuge and practicing dana, a little bit of sila, and maybe I'll get born to Sita heaven or some other place. And, let me enjoy something there, or let me be reborn with Maitreya Buddha in the distant future, and so on. So some people might have those kind of thoughts, but that's certainly not, the Buddha never encouraged that kind of thinking. And he stated that everybody, if they really had a strong yearning to do the practice, that it could be possible, but of course there could be underlying karmic blocks too. That it might take more than just one lifetime to go through all those stages, but If you think you can't do it, then you defeat yourself right away. But at least if you give the right efforts and make some, the effort to practice before you die, then whatever you do is not going to be lost. It's going to be kept, and hopefully you'll be able to take up where you left off in the next life. So let me see about. Is this also like Dhammanupassana and Chittanupassana? Yes, all these things are interrelated. So many of the aspects of Dhamma you hear about, what I was just discussing, all of that is included in the four foundations of mindfulness as well. And so many aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. What? Is regret that keeps on coming back a fetter? It would be a fetter, yes, because you're identifying with that. And you're still clinging to the ego. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I regret that. Now, it's good, of course, to have a sense of shame, hiri and otapa, about things that you did in the past, but knowing that you can't really do anything about the past now, the only thing you can do is practice mindfulness in the present moment, in developing the right understanding, the right efforts, and the determination to weaken those strong impulses and to not repeat them. And it's only by not repeating them that you will overcome that regret. In fact, the things that we regret are the goad to make us want to practice. I mean, it should be. Sure, we've all done a lot of things in our life that we might have regretted. But again, you reflect on no self. It wasn't really me doing that. It was just defilements doing that. It was conditionings of society that helped programmed us into doing a lot of these things. Of course, some of our own inner karmic tendencies were there too. But, again, to reflect on impermanence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and no self. So just dwelling on the regret and, letting that eat you up, that is unwholesome. And so if it keeps coming back, it's because you're identifying with it. Don't identify it. So I'm, overcoming that now. And you have to make the efforts not to repeat the habits. That's the main thing, because every time you repeat them, you're going to regret them again. So, and it's not easy to change our defilements. They've been accumulated in our unconscious mind for many, many, many lifetimes, not even just this life. So anyway, that's why it requires a lot of patience and right understanding about that. But yeah. Okay. So I think that's the end of this kind of discussion, and thank you for your questions and attending. So now, as we did last week, we're going to have a little meditation period. Now, if you live somewhere in Europe and it's already midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, you're getting sleepy, or some other place, or in Brazil, you can go out of the meeting. But if you'd like to stay to do about a 35 or 40-minute meditation, then we're going to take a short little break for about 2 minutes. If you need to use the restroom, drink some water. Then I'm going to lead you through a few exercises, a few simple stretches that I've been doing for those who've been in the last few sessions. Okay? So go ahead and take a couple minutes break and come back. Seconds with keeping the air in our lungs, and then returning to the starting point on the out breath. So you can kind of just watch me and so on the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms and stretch your head back. Look up at the back of your hands. On the out breath, the palms downward and touch the top of the head. And again, in breath, palms up, straighten the arms, stretch up. Out breath, touch the top of the head. Third time, in breath, palms up, straighten the arms. This time, hold that upward stretch longer. And release the fingers on the out breath. Bring the arms back to the sides and relax. Close your eyes. Just feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to feel the effects of that exercise and breathing in your body. Like increased heartbeat or some tingling sensations or subtle pulsation. If you can't feel anything like that, just mentally remember standing, standing, standing in the present moment of the body. Then next one on the in-breath, push up on the toes and raise the arms over the head and stretch up. On the out breath, come back down, heels to the floor, hands to the sides. Again, in breath up. Use the breath to help lift and lower the body. Out. Once more, in. Out. Just relax. Just close the eyes. Just try to feel the subtle sensations of the body. Increased pulsation, tingling sensation. Just feel where the clothing touches the skin of your shoulders, arms, chest, legs. Just remember standing, standing. And next, we're going to do side bending using both arms. So on an in-breath, raise both arms over the head like this. Keep the fingers and arms straight, your biceps close to your head. On the out-breath, bend over the right side as far as you comfortably can. Feel that stretch in the side. In-breath, lift up. Pause. Then the other side, out breath. In breath up. Again to the right, out breath. Left. Once more to each side. On the out breath, lower the arms, relax. Just one last exercise, head turning from right to left. So on an in-breath, turn your head to the right as far as you comfortably can. Try to let go of the right shoulder. And the out breath, turning all the way back to the left to look over the left shoulder. In breath to the right. Out breath left. In breath right. Left. On the next in breath, let the head stop in the center. Start to feel the whole body. Head down to the feet. So feel that increased kind of organic aliveness of the body, the activated cellular vibration from deep breathing and the movement. Charge up all the cells of the body. Feel that or imagine that. It's awakening awareness, awakening the body awareness. Which is the first stage of meditation. Okay, so now to come back to your seats and take up your meditation posture. You can sit on the ground or sit in a chair. So try to sit straight. Try not to lean back on anything if you can help it. Try to keep the head and the spine in a straight line. And gently close the eyes. First of all, just feel the weight of your buttocks, feet pressing the floor. Feel your hands and fingers touching. Or feel some subtle sensation in your fingers, palm. Feel the weight of the arms kind of hanging from the shoulders. Feel where the clothing rubs against the skin of the arms. And feel your head balanced on top of the neck. Try to imagine that you're balancing a stack of books on top of the head. So you keep the chin perfectly level to the floor so the books don't fall off. Try to feel that straight alignment of the head and spine. And feel your face Relax your face muscles. Feel the eyes resting in the eye socket, and the eyelids stretched over the eyeballs. And just try to mentally feel that outline of the sitting body, and that point behind the eyes. Just try to feel the outline of the sitting body, general sense of the feet and buttocks underneath, the arms at the sides, the head on top. Just mentally remember sitting, sitting, sitting. Mindfulness of the body. Right now it's sitting. And then begin taking some deep, slow breaths like we were doing it with the yoga. Or take 3 or 4 seconds to slowly expand the abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. Hold the air in the lungs for 2 or 3 seconds to allow the oxygen to get into the blood. And feel the relaxing contraction of the out breath. Just ride the contracting out breath down to the in. And then the next in breath. Just take a couple more deep, slow breaths like that, thinking like this to yourself. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Now we're going to count the breaths from 1 to 10 to try to develop a more precise concentration. Still keep feeling the breathing in the center of the body, the expanding and contracting movements. Still try to take some slightly deeper breaths if you can to help feel it better. And with the next expanding in breath, count 1. With contracting out breath, also count 1. Next in breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In breath, 3. Out breath, 3. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In breath, 5. Out breath, 5. In breath 6. Out breath 6. In breath 7. Out breath 7. In breath 8. Out breath 8. In breath 9. Out breath 9. In breath 10. Out breath 10. Now discontinue the counting, discontinue any controlling the breath, let the breathing return to its uncontrolled rhythm, but continue to feel it, to observe it, feel the residual or lesser expanding and contracting movement. Just simply know when the breath is coming in, knowing when the breath is going out, knowing by feeling it, by understanding it. An in-breath is not an out-breath, and an out-breath is not an in-breath. So understanding breathing in, understanding breathing out. So try to notice the brief pause between the breaths. After the in-breath, there's a brief pause, maybe just a fraction of a second. And after the out-breath, there's a brief pause, fraction of a second, maybe longer. Noticing the pauses is important. Because the mind normally wanders away in the pause, because we're not aware of it, paying attention to it. So breathing in, pause. Breathing out, in the pause. Just a complete breath. During those pauses, try to feel the outline of the posture, and to remember that you're sitting. Just breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. The ongoing, continuous connection to the present moment. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. It's like looking through a microscope or a magnifying glass. Just try to notice how each breath is different. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, sometimes it's an easy breath, sometimes a difficult breath. It's always changing. It's part of clear comprehension. Noticing the changes. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Breath by breath, moment by moment. It's cultivating mindfulness and concentration. Just let your thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Just keep the breathing body in the front of the awareness. And try to notice those brief pauses between the breath. And be alert for thoughts sneaking up into the mind. Make a note of thinking. The thoughts may disappear. Coming back to the breathing. Just keep turning up the power of the mental microscope to notice subtler details, sensations of the breathing body. Sensations of breathing are there in the middle, but around the breathing you might notice some other sensations on your arms, hands, coming and going. Try to feel subtle sensations where the clothing rubs against the skin of your belly or rib cage, your chest, as it expands or contracts. That's how you really feel the breathing. Helps to keep the mind awake. Notice all those little different sensations produced by expanding and contracting. If you have too many thoughts, you can go back to counting the breaths from 1 to 10 if it helps you to stay focused. You could do some deep, slow breathing to help feel it more clearly. Breathing in the palm, breathing out the palm. If any pains or itching sensations arise, endure them with patience. Or even if your mind has too many thoughts, just endure them with patience. They're always changing. Stay connected with the breathing body. Present moment awareness. If you catch yourself totally lost in thoughts, recognize it as lost, lost. Find the body sitting on the seat. Take a deep, slow breath. Bring the mind back into the body to recenter in the breathing body. Coming back to in, sitting, out, out, sitting. The ongoing, continuous, present moment. Check your posture from time to time. The head, chin is drooping downwards. Mindfully lift the chin back up level. If the spine is slouching, mindfully straighten up the back and spine. Notice the difference in the quality of your attention. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Thoughts come and go. Sounds come and go. Various sensations of pleasure or pain come and go. Drowsiness comes and goes. These are all just the continuous flow of change and impermanence through this body and mind. If we lose that connection to the breathing body, the present moment, the mind gets easily lost and tossed about the stormy seas of worry, anxiety, fear, greed, hatred, deluded thought. This breathing body is the mind's natural lifeline, its natural life preserver, to keep the mind floating from moment to moment in mindfulness and concentration. This breathing body is always there, just beneath your nose. 100 or more pounds of flesh and bone. It's your only trusty friend that will never leave you until death. Everything else will leave you in change. But your breathing body will be there every second, every moment. You just have to remember it. And immediately it's there. Sitting and breathing, standing or breathing. Walking and breathing. Laying down and breathing. Okay, now we're going to spend the last some minutes of this meditation period in cultivating thoughts of metta or friendliness and best wishes toward our own body and mind and to all other beings. So just again, take a few deep, slow breaths. And after breathing in, hold the air in the lungs for a few seconds. Try to imagine and feel that oxygenated blood going from the lungs into the bloodstream and carried out to all parts of the body, mind, nervous system. And feel that relaxing contraction of the out breath. And just imagine that holding in the breath and that oxygenated blood going out. And the body is sending metta to your own body and mind, doing something good for your body and mind, being friendly, having best wishes, by doing some deep, slow breathing, one of the most healing things you can do for the body and mind. And kind of just thinking along these lines to yourself as you're taking a few more deep, slow breaths. May I be well, peaceful, mindful, and wise. May I be free from excessive attachment, aversions, worry, fear, anxiety. May I be free from the pains and sufferings arising from my past unwholesome karmic thoughts and actions. May I have the patience, the strength, the mindfulness, and wisdom to apply these teachings of the Buddha to overcome all difficulties in life. May I continue to deepen my understanding of the Dhamma in practice of meditation till I become one who knows and sees, to overcome confusion and doubts and suffering. May I be well, mindful, and wise. And if you can still take some more in-breaths, and with each out-breath, you can send these same thoughts to your family members, mother, father, even if they've passed away somewhere else in samsara, your other living relatives, friends, Dhamma, friends, others, sending the same thoughts to them. May all of them be well, peaceful, mindful, and wise. May all of them be free from worry, fear, anxiety, greed, and hatred. May all of them be free from the pain, sorrow, and sufferings caused by their previous thought, speech, and action. If they haven't already, may they also have the opportunity to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, and to learn and practice meditation, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, peaceful, and wise. And extending these thoughts out further Just think about and recollect all the common, ordinary folks out there in the world that are struggling and toiling, especially in this time of the pandemic. There's extra amount of worry, fear, agitation, boredom of staying in the house so often, or there are conflicts that arise from that. Just thinking, may all these beings be well, peaceful, and mindful. May they be free from excessive worry, fear, anxiety, pain, and sufferings of body and mind. May they also have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. If they haven't already, may they also have the opportunity to hear the teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, peaceful, and wise. Even send a few out breaths of metta vibrations to all the politicians in Washington or other places, state governors, legislators, wherever country you might live in, making all the difficult decisions in this difficult period of time, wishing that they have the mindfulness and wisdom and loving kindness, friendliness to make the right decisions that affect so many millions, billions of people. Wishing them, if they haven't already, they have the opportunity to hear the Dhamma, learn and practice meditation, to free their minds from confusion and suffering. May they be well, mindful and wise. You can finally, with each out-breath, just imagine with each out-breath sending these waves of pure love, pure wisdom, pure energy, metta vibrations out across the whole country, the whole earth, surrounding the whole earth, these vibrations. If you can imagine the beautiful blue-green earth suspended in space, it's from the NASA photographs. Just imagine this beautiful blue-green earth being suffused and saturated and permeated with these metta vibrations, pure energy, pure love, pure wisdom. It's with the idea that may all living beings, wherever they might be, large or small, living far or near, weak or strong, rich or the poor, may all living beings be well, happy, and peaceful, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from worry, anxiety, stress. May all beings have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. And may all beings have the opportunity to hear the mind-healing teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, free the mind from the wheel of suffering. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, mindful, and wise. just like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful and wide. We'll close this meditation, close with chanting a little Buddhist verse that many of you probably know. You can join in the chanting if you like. Dukkha pata nidukkha bhayapatta nibbaya sokkapata nisoka hontu sabbe pipanino. Dukkha pata nidukkha bhayapatta nibbaya sokkapata nisoka hontu sabbe pipanino. Dukkha pata nidukkha bhayapatta nibbaya sokkapata nisoka hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. In this way, may all beings live with mindfulness and wisdom. Thus spoke the Buddha. If you'd like to join, finish in chanting the word sadhu 3 times. Slowly, we chant it with the breathings. We take a deep breath and on a long out breath, chanting the word sadhu, repeating it. Sadhu.